Hello, today we are going to talk about the Delphi software, which is an IDE integrated development environment, which is one of the top most important IDEs and frameworks for creating GUI applications on Windows along Microsoft's .NET and the Qt framework. It has many third-party components, for instance DevExpress has components for WinForms WPF. This is for .NET Framework. For the web, jQuery, Angular, React, Vue. And this VCL is for Delphi. So VCL means Delphi, and WPF, WinForms, means .NET Framework. Okay, so Delphi is still relevant on Windows desktop applications, and they still have really good third-party components available, such as the DevExpress ones. VCL components for Delphi, which means the programming language object Pascal. So source files have the extension PAS from Pascal. And C++ Builder, which is another product from the makers of Delphi, which are Embarcadero, which are currently Idera since 2015 under the Embarcadero brand. So Delphi evolved from Borland's Turbo Pascal for Windows. So Turbo Pascal for MS-DOS, not for Windows. Okay, so early Turbo Pascals for MS-DOS. The Pascal programming language. This is how it looked like. This is what I was taught in high school. I didn't learn C++ in high school, just Pascal and other things. Turbo Pascal. Okay. And there's an important name in here, which is the same name that is connected with the .NET framework from Microsoft, Microsoft's early Java technology, and nowadays TypeScript. And the name is Anders Heilsberg, creator of Delphi and Turbo Pascal, lead architect of the C# programming language, has worked on the development of TypeScript, Visual J++ with the Windows Foundation classes, Okay, so this is the guy. So if you ever did Turbo Pascal, such I did, upgrading to Delphi was really easy. Okay, so let's see if we can install a version of Delphi, and let's look how the integrated development environment looks like. So website is this. Start a free trial, buy now, renew. So Delphi 11.1. Let's see what this is. What do you get with your Delphi Architect Edition trial? What is the Delphi Architect? Can't I use something else? Products. Delphi. It gets back us here. So I need to complete an account, and then I will be able to download. Delphi Community Edition, what is that? Full-featured free Delphi ID for creating native cross-platform apps. For building iOS, not interesting. Android, no. Mac OS, no. Code editor. Does it do VCL? Yes, I don't want to do FireMonkey. So the Delphi product consists of the following things: the Object Pascal programming language, and then two separate frameworks. One is FireMonkey, which is for creating applications which are cross-platform, so the application will look kind of the same on all of the platforms, so Windows, macOS, Android, and iOS, with a single code base, responsive UI, so means hardware accelerated GUI, but I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in just Windows desktop applications, which means VCL, Visual Control Library. There's some database. Okay, can I get, if you're an individual? Yes, I am an individual. Download. It's free, but you need an account. Okay, so let me create an account and I'll be back. So I have downloaded an online installer. Let's run it. Yes, why do I have? Just a second, let me see if I have a firewall. I do. So virtual machine, I don't need a firewall. Let me see if the Windows Defender is enabled. Turn off Microsoft Defender. Yes. And since I'm still here, Windows Update. Disabled, correct. I agree to the RAD Studio license agreement. I don't want to install any RAD Studio. I want just Delphi. Back options. Install for all users, create a desktop shortcut. I don't like this directory. So they have C++ Builder, a product, and Delphi, another product. So, and they have a superset of these two, which is called RAD Studio. And I totally don't want to install RAD Studio. I want just the Delphi part. Next. I already have a product serial number. Let me see if I have such a thing. Okay, so I already have a serial number. I have received that via email. And now it requires my serial number and maybe even the login. Okay, I have pasted my serial number that I received via the email, and I pressed next. Okay, so let's see side by side. Loading and downloading. So I want just Delphi Windows, and no macOS, no iOS, no Android. Half a gigabyte download size. Continue. Additional D unit. Yes. T-chart, I've never used T-chart. Help, hopefully goes online. And samples, I've never used samples, but here goes. So install. Interbase Redist. So what is interbased? So interbase is an SQL database that's based on what? Based on Firebird database server. Developed by the Firebird Foundation. firebirdsql.org. So Borland on the 25th of July 2000 released the source code of the product Borland Interbase 6.0 as an open source project on SourceForge. Firebird 1.0 is a continuation of the open source software project effort. The first release was 2 years later. Porting the codebase from C to C++. Firebird version 1.5 in 2004. Improved query optimizer, SQL 92, SQL 1999, explicit locking, Firebird to 64-bit architectures, Mozilla Firefox name conflict, So Firebird was kind of like an alternative to MDB files, so to Microsoft Office Access files, and to Microsoft SQL Server Express local DB. Can run with a server, so can have a server or can be embedded. That's what I remember about it. So the database engine, SQL engine, can run inside of your process or as a separate executable process. Datatrieve. Ashton Tate. Open source. Okay, so let's look at the programming language that's used. It's called Object Pascal. So files have the extension .pas. The project and the solution have other extensions. Okay, so the heritage is Apple Pascal, Niklaus Wirth, Apple Computer, Apple Lisa, and other Apple Pascals. Think Pascal, Semantic. Mac app. (1986), Object Pascal, Turbo Pascal product for the Macintosh. 1989, Turbo Pascal 5.5 for those. The development of Turbo Pascal for not for MS-DOS but for Windows 3.11 started in 1993. So Delphi was the code name for this effort of porting Borland Turbo Pascal from MS-DOS to Windows 3.11. Delphi 1.0 was released in 1995 on the 14th of February. So you can take Turbo Pascal code and Delphi will still compile it, so it has backwards compatibility. The keyword now is class instead of object. There's a constructor, a virtual destroy destructor, functions return something, procedures don't return anything, methods are functions or procedures which are member of a class. Has added generics over the time, anonymous methods. Okay. So it says operation completed, start working. Community edition. For a year or something. Okay, so let's see what can I configure in here. Favorite theme dark. You can change anytime from the desktop toolbar, the main ID window. Next. Configure source control. I don't want any source control. Personalize common settings, autosave files and layout. Show the classic component bar. No. Convert files with known extensions to CRLF. Why? Why don't you convert the other way to LF, to Unix line endings? Default project folder. Correct. Get started. What is this? This is the welcome page. We can always reopen it, right? Somehow. So from the main menu, view welcome page. Okay. So let's put all of the useful things on the left. Object inspector, structure. How do I do that? I have no clue. Palette. Yes, palette. Okay. So after I did my change, so I want all of the things to be on the left hand side of the screen, the tool windows, and the rest of the screen is for the source code editor. So after that I need to save my changes, which is startup layout, default layout, debug layout. So I need to save this desktop as startup layout. Okay, replace it. Okay, so this is the button to change the theme. This is the button to change one of the three layouts. So let's remove some useless buttons. Okay, what buttons do we have in here? View unit, view form, show code, show non-visual, new, open, save all. Yeah, we could intervene in here. How do we do that? The standard. No new. Okay. Open, no way. Save just one, no way. Okay, what is this? for starting a toolbar for debugging. Okay, so let's get started. Let's get a tutorial and do that. The simplest thing that we can do is a command line application. File, new, console application. Why don't you stay where I put you? Then we'll delay default on startup and where are you? Save this thing as the default layout. Yes, thank you. Okay, so this is how the minimalist project and .pass file look like. So it has a name, it's called program project 1. It says all of the rest files should be included in this executable as Windows exe resources. It's a Win32 application of type Windows System Subsystem Console, not of Windows Subsystem GUI, and uses one namespace. So these are namespaces in C#. In Delphi they are called units. So the unit is system.sysutils. And the functions, the free functions exported by this Delphi unit are these. So to create a GUID, this guy, where are you? So UUID create is external, similar to .NET Framework. It says that the definition is somewhere else, maybe in a Windows Win32 DLL. UUID create, and then create GUID is a wrapper function around the Windows Win32 function. And what it does, when the Win32 function, API function fails, instead of returning, it throws or something. Let's see exactly. So the Win32 function is called UUID create with this spelling. It's exported by rpc.dc.h if you're calling it from C or C++. And for Delphi, it's exported from here, rpcrt4.dll. And Delphi has this thing which is similar to the pinvoke in .NET Framework. So I don't like this. I want line breaks. Tools, options, break. Language Delphi, line endings, preserve. Editor. Wrap. Yeah. No. want wraparound. Insert mode, group undo, cursor, beyond double click, force cut, autocomplete, create backup, show all, highlight brace, undo after save, brief, persistent, overwrite, find, code folding, auto search, wraparound, default file encoding. Don't tell me that they implemented UTF-8 without any BOM byte order mark. Who knows? Okay. I don't know how to do that. Keep trailing blanks. Show tab character, show space, show syntax, show line breaks, highlight. I know. Where did they hide it? Delphi wrap lines. Where's the word wrap setting for the editor in Delphi? If it has such a question, then maybe they did not implement this minimal feature in an editor. There is no word wrap setting. The IDE's code editor does not support word wrap. To word wrap long lines, use the enter key. I use many editors and they all have word wrap. Even Windows little notepad has it. Yes. Okay, I don't like this answer. I don't like to scroll left and right. Why would I want to do that? Let's supplement this code editor with something better then, or what can we do? Language, Pascal. Okay, home. So if this is an if def similar to C++, MS Windows, then similar to pinvoke, we can import this function into Delphi from the DLL rpcrt4.dll, so from Win32 API DLL. The name of the function is the same. The name of the function is exported from rpcrt4.dll. We can look at it. How do we do that? We need depends. Depends, I don't know, 64. Let's go with this one. I want to have a zip file, put it in temp bin, extract it there. Oh, what's in here? Dependencies GUI. Okay, and the file is called rpcrt. rpcrt, this guy. Okay, and the function is called uuid create. We are going to, so this is the tree view with DLLs, and rpcrt4.dll depends on many DLLs. Depends at load time, not at runtime. Okay, so this DLL has a list of DLLs that it depends on at load time, similar to LDD in the LDD binary in Linux. And this view is for PI, which is imported functions. And this view is for exported functions. So we're going to look at the exported functions, sort by function name, and go to the somewhere at the end. It's called uuid create, the function with this capitalization. In Win32 DLLs, the exported functions have an ordinal. In this case, it's 1547. And we don't really know the signature of this thing. Okay, as a go-to definition. So very, very, very similar to pinvoke in the .NET framework. This is the name of the DLLs where it's exported, the name of the function, so a bit of metadata about it. And it says that the calling convention of the function is the default Win32 calling convention, which is std call. And let's look at the parameters. Where are you? So in Delphi is out tguid, this UID thing. So this is a pointer to UUID in C programming language, which UUID is typedef GUID, which is a GUID structure. So it's typedef struct underscore GUID with 4 members. Let's look at the signature of tguid. Control click on it. Control click. Right click, go to definition, something. Oh, wrong ID. Okay, so control click on tguid takes us to the syntax of Delphi for records. So in C++ is typedef struct and the name. In here is a record, and so basically this way we can learn the syntax of Delphi compared to C++. Okay, so it has a, how can we look at this? So it's a record, which is a struct, has 4 members, 4 data members. So D1 data 1, D2 data 2, it's ugly the fact that Delphi does not use the same identifiers as the Win32 API. Why would you name a thing D1 instead of data1? If you would use the exact same identifiers as the Win32 API, that would make it easier to grep. Okay, so cardinal is unsigned long, word is unsigned short, and then array of 8 is an array of 0 to 7. In Delphi, at least when you learn it, arrays start from 1, so are not 0 based. So in high school, for instance, or in samples, sometimes arrays start from 1, so goes array 1 dot dot something, which is not a thing to do. In order to have as much compatibility with C and C++, you should use the conventions in the C++, Unix, Linux world. So arrays, when you write them, always make sure to have them 0 based. So the first element in the array is at index 0. Okay, so it says 8, that's 0 to 7. Exactly what we see here, 0 to 7. 8 positions inside of the array. This means 2. So from 0 to 7. Off byte, which in this case is unsigned char. Let's look at go at the definition of byte. We can't because it's a built-in, right? F1 says there's no help. Okay, not what I wanted. I wanted online help on the web, not help from the Delphi IDE. So let's go Ctrl T, Delphi IDE, Ctrl V. Okay. Now is now. How do I find the doc string, the documentation for this exact method? What's the incantation inside of Google such that it searches the Delphi documentation? DocWiki. Okay. So there's T bytes, not what I'm talking about. Bytes of Delphi. Okay, so Embarcadero Delphi keywords. Keywords in Delphi. Let's see those. So this is C++. Why would it? When I say Delphi, it's Delphi, right? Reserved words. So the reserved words in Delphi are end and begin. This begin is the open bracket for a block of code. So similar to these curly brackets in C++. And end ends blocks. So it ends a record, it ends a block of code which started with begin. It ends a program like this. So the main function of the of a command line executable is this begin end with a dot block. So this gets translated into Win32 console subsystem main function. This begin, which is paired with an end with a dot. Most of ends have a semicolon at the end. This is a special end because it ends a main function, so it ends with a dot. Okay, similar to C#. If you go object.something notation, there's no minus greater than notation. So in C++ there's two notations. There's e dot something and e minus greater than something. In Delphi, that notation would be, I don't really know. You need to so e is a pointer, so you dereference the pointer and then you go dot, which is not needed anymore. It was needed in Turbo Pascal, but not needed in Delphi. Okay, so dot is the only, is that an operator or something, that gives us access to members of a object. Okay, colon sometimes means type, like in this case, so it's an e, which is a local variable, a colon, which is the type of the local variable, and then exception, which is system.exception, which is the type of this variable e. Control click on it, and it takes us to system.sysutils.exception. So the namespace is system.sysutils, and then the type is called exception, and it's a class. And all classes inherit from the object. And if you say exception equals class, so you just define the exception, if I remember correctly, it still inherits from the object, so you don't really need to write parentheses, the object parentheses. It automatically, all of the classes in Delphi inherit from the object. Okay, so there's class and record, which record is a struct in C++, and this is a class. Okay, visibility, keywords, private, protected, public, and 3 or 4 more. There's published, where are you? P. Protected. Private, where are you? So private is possible, so you can group members of a class in a private block to make all of them private, or in a protected block to make them protected. So protected means that I don't know, you can access them if you inherit from exception. Public, you can inherit them from you can access them from an object of type exception. Private, you can't access them from the exterior. Then there's class things. So there's class procedure, which is a static method. So a method which is not on the object of type exception, but on the class type exception. Okay. So static methods are used for constructors, factories, deserializers, and other commonly used functions which seem to belong with the type. It's debatable if static methods are really needed. Okay. This is the indexer. So it goes property, identifier, and then square brackets. Indexers have an index of, for instance, type integer. So this would make it index like an array, or in this case, a type string, which makes them look like a dictionary, a hash map, a hash table. Okay, so integer makes this thing look like an array of integer, and this makes it look like a hash map, a hash. Okay, record and keyword deprecated, and with the alternative as a string. These are similar to there's syntax to group kind of like the C#'s region, but this is not it. Okay. If-def, similar to if-def blocks in C++ and C. What is class var? So this is a function which returns a string. So the return value of functions is after you close the parentheses with the parameters, then you go colon and then the type of the return of the function. So this would make this a function because it returns pointer. This is a function because it returns string, while this is not a function because it doesn't return anything, so it's a procedure. There's different Delphi keywords for functions and procedures. Function and procedure. Procedure doesn't return anything. So both are sub-algorithms. Okay. Static keyword, class procedure, static methods. Okay. These are aliases, so kind of like type def. You can define your own types if you're inside of the block of type. So this is the block of type. This is called a unit. It has the extension pass. It has this path. So C program files x86 Embarcadero Studio 21.0 source RTL. RTL means the runtime library. Sys is the system runtime library. system.sysutils.pass. When you build your executable, you have two options. Either you don't depend on Delphi DLLs, or you depend on Delphi DLLs. So you can link statically, as it were. So all of the Delphi source code from first party, so from Embarcadero Delphi, all of your source code, Delphi source code, all of the source code from third parties get compiled together, and they don't depend on any other Delphi DLLs. Delphi DLLs in this case have a special extension. So let's look at that. Where is the project? This guy, I'm going to rebuild it. There's no rebuild button. Where is it? Clean. Automatically close on successful compile, okay. And then build. Okay. And I tell it to not include any, to link everything statically. So this is the setting. In here it says when I build the release Win32 build platform, so target, build configuration, then it can link with runtime packages. It's forced in this case, and the runtime packages are the following. DBX SQLite driver, IndieIP, REST components, bind comp, DBX, VCL. This is one of the most important. This contains the visual class library, visual control library. The most important one is called RTL. VCL image is for icons, if I remember correctly. This is for XML RTL. RTL, this is the most basic Delphi type DLL that your application can depend on. VCLX, extensions to VCL. VCL means GUI library. ADO RTL, that's for Microsoft's ADO database access. DBRTL, real-time runtime library for DB access, database access. This is for internet, so there are controls for FTP server, FTP client, HTTP server, HTTP client, etc. Okay, so you cancel. We've selected that our executable does not link, does not depend at load time on any Delphi DLLs. So all of the Delphi source code, first party, third party, my source code will be combined together in a single executable. I go save, I go build. So I'm on debug build configuration right now. And where is the executable? Platform config. Let's look at this project. So it's in Documents, Embarcadero Studio Projects. Control D. So me, where am I? Let me save this thing to a better location, which would be 0720 and first console up. F2, Control C, properties, building. No, I need to save this file. File, save all. And since I didn't select any directory for this file or the name for this file yet, I just went new project, file new project. First it asked me where should it save the project. So I go with this directory. How can I copy the directory? Control C, Control V. Let's make this project name better. The extension for the project is dproj, so Delphi project. Save. The syntax for the dproj file is Microsoft MS Build. MS Build is loosely similar to Ant, to Java Ant. So you can build this thing with MS Build.exe if it can find the Delphi toolchains. Okay, language, XML, and very, very similar to Visual Studio.NET Framework CS projects, property groups, Win32, config debug, very, very similar. These are the namespaces that I can use with shorter name. These are the packages that it can use. Okay. Excluded packages from Delphi, Microsoft Office 2000 and XP controls. Okay. The other file in there. So it's a dproj, dproj, and then you can also have a solution. So this thing is called a project group. Let's name this as the first console app. Project group. The extension is groupproj, and Delphi wants you to use kind of the same capitalization as C#. So all of the files should be Delphi cased. So all of the words should be should have the first character uppercase and the rest lowercase. And the words should not be separated with underscore or minus or dot or something. So this is the C# coding style guideline for instance, for class names or for type names, excepting interfaces which have the I prefix. Groupproj, save. Let's look at the groupproj file. So it's an MS build file which says that it contains just this dproj thing, dproc project, which is the first console app dproc. Okay. Then the DPR file is in fact a .pas file, so it's a Delphi source code. 99% of time Delphi source code files have the extension pas. The entry point of the program is different. For executables, it has the extension DPR. It has a syntax program name, begin, the main begin, the end with a dot. So this is the entry point function of the main function of the executable. And then this source code depends on this, as it were, C# namespace. So in this case, it's a Delphi unit name, because exception is a type defined inside of sysutils. If you delete this part, the exception, you can also delete the uses. Okay, so its uses is a block, and you have as many namespaces, unit names mentioned here. Okay. Try, except, and this is a syntax for try catch blocks, as it were in C#. So the except block doesn't have a curly bracket, but it ends with an and with a semicolon. The try block starts with try and ends in except. Okay. You can catch many types of exceptions. This block, right line, is a block when you catch this type of exception. So it's the same thing as going begin and then end. I usually never, I always use begins. So if the block has just one instruction, you can omit the end and the begin. Similar to C++, C#, C, etc. But again, I always, even code blocks which have just one instruction, I have them wrapped in begin ends. Okay, Ctrl S. And says that you can reload it, yes. And I need to format it. Where can I do that? Format project sources. Do you really want to format? Yes. Ctrl S. I don't like this format because it deletes the trailing new lines. I always want a trailing new line at the end of a file. What is this? Toxicity metrics. If depth. Okay, Delphi. These are paths. Type library. I don't know what this thing does. Formatter for Delphi. Indentation. What indentation does it use? 2 spaces is okay with me, or 4 spaces. Okay. Indentation. Where does it say it's spaces, not tabs? Spaces or tabs? indent begin and end keywords. Function bodies, inner functions, interfaces nested, case contents, case else, doesn't say if it uses tabs or spaces. Spacing around colons. After only round colons in format, commas, semicolons, comments, yes, comments, assignment binary unary, parentheses, square brackets, line breaks. Okay, trim source true. What does this thing do? From the beginning and the end of file. Insert line breaks for begin and single instructions. Functions, empty lines. I don't see this setting to keep a trailing new line. Okay, capitalization. Compiler directives, numbers uppercase. Other words as first occurrence. Reserved words and directives. I like reserved words to always be lowercase. Reserved words are case insensitive in Delphi, so you can have uses all uppercase or U uppercase as is, or uses all lowercase. So that's a big problem because sometimes two different developers will use different capitalization. So I always like to have the Delphi keywords lowercase and SQL keywords uppercase. So that's personal preferences. Align. Profiles. Okay. So I build the entire. I can't build a solution. Why not? Just a project. Build all projects. Okay. And let's look at the resulting files. What is this? You want to reload it? Yes. Alt F4. No. So it's Win32, debug, and first console up. Let's look at its dependencies. So Control A, delete, where are you? No, close the tab. And then drag first console up on top of it. So is this a 32-bit exe? Yes, because it says Win32. And this is dependencies for Win32, for 32-bit executables, DLLs. So it says that first console.exe depends on 0 Delphi DLLs. It only depends on Win32 API DLLs, so kernel 32, version DLL, user 32, all layout, net API, and adv API. Traditionally, Delphi executables are very portable between versions of Windows. They try to use a least common denominator number of imported APIs from the Windows Win32 API. So when a new Win32 API function appears in Windows 11, they try to not use it such that the Delphi binaries continue to built on Windows 11 continue to run correctly, for instance, on Windows Server 2013, which is the equivalent of Windows 8.1. Okay, so the executable is fatter, is larger in size, is 1.3 megabytes, but it depends on zero Delphi things. It depends only on Microsoft Windows things. But we can make it depend on Delphi things with this setting. So we go right click on it, options, and then we go for just a debug configuration Win32, link with runtime packages. I go OK, save. So now this exe can depend on a ton of Delphi DLLs. It can, but it does not. So the linker only links this executable with some Delphi DLLs, the ones that are really needed in order to run. So for instance, we see in here that it might depend on DBX SQLite driver, but it does not, because the source code that we have in this application does not make use of the DBX SQLite driver runtime package, or it doesn't depend on Indy, which are TCP/IP controls. Doesn't depend on REST because we don't do any HTTP things. It doesn't depend on Fire because we don't do any cross-platform things. It doesn't depend on FMX because we don't do FireMonkey cross-platform GUI. It doesn't depend on VCL because we don't do graphical user interface inside of this program. So we go save, and project build all. Okay. So let's look at the first console app. Now instead of 1.something megabytes is 700 kilobytes, so it's smaller. Where are you? And it seems to not depend on any of the, not even on rtl.dcu. That's the name for Delphi DLLs. It's DCU, Delphi Compiled Unit. It's really strange. It should depend on, because sysutils, I guessed it's part of the RTL, but it's not. Okay, so this is how a console command line application looks like. We can run it. Let's put something in here. So we have console, not console, write line. It's a procedure, write ln. With the wrong capitalization, it should be uppercase L. We can write to a file. Where are you? So write-ln is not defined in here. It's kind of a built-in. So it says predefined constants, predefined types, predefined procedures, predefined functions, such as the function true, the function integer, the function write-line, do not have actual declarations. Instead, they are built into the compiler and are treated as if they were declared at the beginning of the system unit. So there was a time when I could see at least the definitions of these things, I don't know, as a comment inside of here, if I remember correctly, inside of the system.pass, there was just the definition of the function write_ln. So now we don't know the signature of write_ln. How do we do this? We go open the round bracket, the parenthesis, and it says it can have a file, a p1 until a pn. So the file is optional. We don't write to any file. We want to write to the default thing, which is the standard output standard stream. And p1 to pn is any valid identifier of a variable, for instance, in Delphi. So strings are also valid things. The string literal, which is with single quote. So we can go hello Delphi. Okay, Control S. We build. What's the build? All projects shortcut. Okay, and now we can run this thing from the command line. We go first console, and it says hello Delphi. Okay. Double commander in here. Okay, how do we make a shortcut for the build all projects? Options. Keyboard. And I don't want the project options. I want the Delphi options. So tools options, the options of the IDE. Key mappings page. Okay. How do I edit the key mappings? So this is use tab character for the Delphi language. So it's spaces by default. And tabs insert 2 spaces, tab character. Okay. How can I edit the key mappings? Current editor. I know, let's search. Okay, Delphi key set key binding. Notice Control W. I want to reassign some keys manually. Yes, you can remap keys, but only using a custom partial key binding package, which you can easily write and install yourself. You cannot, however, directly change key mappings on the fly. Oh, mama. Okay, let's not do that. So another mandatory feature to any IDE is to put whatever key binding I want to the build function of the IDE, the build solution, build project group in our case. Okay. Compile and build, Shift F9. What if we go with some non-Delphi key bindings? So let's go with Visual Studio. Key mapping modules. Save. Okay. We can open the solution by double-clicking on the group proj. Okay, let's see what key bindings we have. So F7 to build. Okay, F7. Okay, what else can we do? Let's make it throw an exception. Throw. Control Z. No snippets, no anything. How do we write throw an exception? Delphi throw exception. Yeah, the keyword is raise, not throw. Raise, tap, tap. Okay. Exception, create a very important exception text. Control S. F, what was that? 7. F7. F7. And let's run it again. So it throws an exception and then catches the exception and then writes both the exception object E class name, so the type, and the E.message, which is the message member variable of the exception. Let's use breakpoints. So go click on a possible place to put a breakpoint. So left click inside of this cutter, or what's the name of the thing, and then we go run with debugging. So the option is Ctrl F5, similar to Visual Studio without debugging, and run is with debugging F5. Okay, we don't like this thing at all. So let's close it. Okay. View desktops. So desktop is the entire layout of Delphi IDE. So we want to save the current settings as the debug layout. Okay. Replace it. And start debugging. We start with F5. What are the shortcuts? So let's hide the debug toolbar. We don't need it. So the shortcuts are F10, F11, similar to Windows, to Microsoft's Visual Studio. And then exit, where is it? Step out. Where is step out? Step over, F10, step into, F11, and then step out should be Shift F11. Maybe this Shift F11, okay? And run with debugger F5, run without debugging, Ctrl F5. So let's go F10, which is next. F10, right line. Okay, so it's synced. It wrote to standard output, and then it's synced. And then it goes raise exception create. I will go F11 to go inside of the definition of the constructor of exception.create. So create is the usual name of a constructor. So constructors can probably have different names, such as in this case, which is create fmt, constructor with more than one parameter. But you should try as much as possible to name all of your constructors create. So there's a keyword for constructors, constructor, and this is not a class constructor, so it's not a static constructor, it's a constructor for the object, not for the class. Has one parameter of type string. So fMessage is a coding convention. I'm not sure if it's still the preferred one in Delphi. So E and then Delphi casing is the coding convention for identifiers for names of exceptions. F and then Delphi casing is for members. So F is a field. It's not Hungarian notation. It doesn't say exactly what the type of the F message is, but it's an F which is a field. So fields usually are member variables, and their sibling is properties that have the property keyword and then a getter and a setter. So just the identifier colon space type name and then a semicolon when inside of a class declaration are member variables or fields or member field. Okay, we need to go back. What's the shortcut for back? Navigation back. History back. No shortcut for back. The shortcut for back should be Alt left arrow key, similar to web browsers. And it's not. That's a problem. Okay, so exception create. It will store what we gave it. So the verbatim string, very important exception text, as the value of the field fMessage member variable. F11. So F11, what does it do? It jumped to system.pass and at ASM. So ASM are assembler blocks, starts with an ASM and ends with an end with a semicolon. And it says only use this assembler block if def CPU x86, so only on Intel x86 architecture, whether it be 32-bit or 64-bit, and then only if not pure Pascal. So there's a define which disables all of assembly in this unit system.pass, and that's if def pure Pascal. So this is the function usestrasg. So let's compiler helper for string assignment. Let's look at the call stack in here. So we go view, debug windows, call stack. Where should we place it? On the bottom is okay. So we need to save the current desktop again. Where are those? Desktops. Save desktop as the debug layout. So the debug layout is the standard desktop layout plus the tools, the tool windows that we use for debugging. So those are call stack, threads, the list of breakpoints. The list of breakpoints is really useful even when you don't debug because it acts as a bookmarks list. So you can go F9 to your heart's pleasure, you know, and then you can double click on it and it will jump at that breakpoint. So let's delete these breakpoints. You can't delete more than one breakpoint, I don't know why. Right click, delete. So the shortcut is the del key, delete. Okay. Inside of the call stack, it says we're in the constructor exception.create of very important exception text, and then inside of usestrasg, which these are secondary threads we used as ZW wait. So this is some sort of I don't know, waiting for multiple objects, debug implementation. I don't know. ZW is for Win32 APIs functions which are not that, which are internal and Windows kernel related. NT, these are probably public API. ZW is closer to the kernel space, and NT is in the user space. ZWs are also in the user space, but they are closer to the kernel space. Okay. So the call stack is at least wrong. You know, it looks really wrong to me. int3 is the way to debug in MS-DOS. So it's interrupt3 for debugging. usestrasg, create. So this is something internal to Delphi or to the debugger. We should not look at these, at int3s and at functions which have docstrings such as compiler helper for string assignment. So it has usestrasg. So this is Unicode string is the source. So strings in Delphi might be white char, Unicode string, ANSI string, and Unicode string contains, so this is, I don't know, a struct which has the encoding and then the buffer and then the length or something. Okay, var is the keyword ref in C#, so it's input-output parameter. const is similar to other programming languages, so it declares that it will not modify the source. Strings in Delphi are copy on write, COW. Okay, so they're a struct with, I know, on position 0 is the size, and on the rest of the positions is the buffer. I don't know exactly what the layout is in memory. We can research that thing. Okay, so basically this converts Unicode to destination Unicode. I don't know why. In order to assign it, why would you want to do such a thing? So because this is a string literal, it converts it to a non-literal variable. Make copy of string 1. I know. F10 literal string. Yes, it's a literal string. So length to bytes. Wow. When it receives a literal, it needs to do some work. Okay. So it says project first console up raised exception. Class exception with message very important text. I can ignore the exception or I can break. I'm going to break. And then I go F10. So debugger is on line 14 with exception. So the exception is caught, is of type exception. It's going to create a new local variable of type exception with the wrong name. So all local variables should be lowercase. Let's make them like that. Or should start with a lowercase. So Delphi casing would be my exception with uppercase M and like this. Where are you? Var. So this is a var block, defines variables. This would be Delphi casing. Types are always exception Delphi cased, this guy. But then what about local variables, such as my exception? So this would be Delphi casing, this would be Java casing, so the same thing as Delphi casing, but the first position is lowercase. So this is how I do local variables. Okay. Okay, go Control S to save, F7 to build, terminate, and then F5 to start. F10, we go straight to the raise. It raises, we go break. We're on the line where it defines the name of the local variable. It's E. So variables which are caught in here do not need to be declared in a var block. Okay, so right line has just two parameters. One is the name of a file, the identifier of a file which we don't have, and then var args, as it were, as many valid things. So identifiers of variables, expressions, verbatim strings, or literal strings, right? Anything that's computable on as many positions as you want. So something, comma, something, something, comma, something. Or you could convert all of these to string and then concatenate, for instance. The string concatenate operator is plus. Like this. Okay, so the plus operator between two literal strings. F10. So it says source has been modified inside of the debugger. I always program inside of the debugger. Yes. automatically close. Failed. Why did it fail? Internal error. I know. F7. Errors 1. Is the debugger stopped? Yes. Why doesn't it want to concatenate two strings? Failed errors. C-utils. F7. Okay, there might be what? Doesn't say the line, doesn't say anything. Let's look at the end of lines. With F3, view as hex. So it says 0D0A, 0D0A everywhere. 0D0A, 0D0A. This is 0D0A, two 0D0As, 0D0A, try, 0D0A. Exception 0D0A, raise, 0D0A, except 0D0A, do 0D0A, begin 0D0A, 0D0A. It's not Unix new lines. It's something else. I don't know what. Let's restart the ID. Approach. Hopefully we didn't edit a system unit or something. F7. Okay, now it works perfectly. Intermittently builds do not work in Delphi. That's the way it is. Okay. So let's run it. F5. Break. We didn't have any breakpoints. F10. So it apparently forgets the breakpoints when you close the ID, which is wrong. Okay. E is an object, has the following member variables: f message, very important, exception message, exception text message. Okay, so it concatenated text and message. Hover on top of E, expand. It says help context 0, stacking for nil, inner exception, very similar to C#. Okay. And these are procs. So as member variable, pointer to a function. Okay. I'm not sure why we don't have a call stack in there. There should be one. or a pointer to something. I'm not sure. What is class name? So class name, I'm going to guess, is not a field, so a member variable, but a getter property. No, it's a function that returns string. And this pointer of pbyte of self plus vmt class name. So it operates on the virtual on the vtable of the class. And this is a pointer arithmetic, so similar to C++. So a pointer plus an offset, in this case minus 56, and then the dereference operator. So this whole thing is a pointer to a pointer. It dereferences it, and then from that pointer it gets the string, and then that thing it gets converted from UTF-8 to string, which is a lot of things. Let's go F11. Okay, F11, so we can go as deep as we want inside of the Delphi first party, so the source Delphi source code from Embarcadero, because otherwise we just can't build static executables. So prerequisite to building static executables is either to have the full source code of everything, or to have DCUs, which are compiled units, Delphi compiled units. So that's, you create DCUs by compiling a package which contains many units. Okay, so for instance, the package RTL contains system.sys2tiers or something unit. Okay. So what does it do? It tries to very efficiently work without actually using assembler, which is non-portable. This is very, very similar to very low-level C style, C things. Pointer arithmetics, dereferences, buffers, equals 0, 0 terminated strings. Okay, so somehow I didn't see the output, which is in here. So the icon of the command line started by Delphi is this, not this. So not a C colon backslash as the icon, but a unknown Windows up icon. In Turbo Pascal, the spawn subprocess, you could see it, I know, with an F9 or something. So you switched between the two processes, Delphi IDE, the Turbo Pascal IDE, and the command line shell. But in here you have to always move this window away, because Delphi doesn't remember where you positioned the window. And every time you resize the Delphi IDE, you need to edit the debug layout to save its to save it again, which is really, really annoying. Save desktop debug place. Okay. So this kind of concludes the parts where we talk about how to install Delphi on Windows, the history of Delphi, the syntax of Delphi, how we do pinvoke, so how do we call external DLLs, how do we add assembly blocks, what else? The difference between units and packages, the dproc file, the group proc file, dpr files. They start with program, begin and end with a dot. How you define local variables. You need a var block in above your begin of your function or method or a procedure. This is the way you use previously declared units. We can create a new unit. Where are we? Add new unit. The extension is .pass. We always need to rename it first. File, save as. What do we define in here? A class, which, what does it do? It gives us let's create a unit that lists the root directory. So root, not, we don't need a unit then. Let's delete it. Remove from project. Yes. No. We need a class. Add new other Delphi class. Where are you? I don't know how to create a class without help. Let's create a thread. Okay. Class name is T. All classes should have a T name. So T root lister. Okay. The unit should be named the same as the class, but without a file save as correct place. Lister with a U. Or not. I don't remember. What was the convention? Root list. Let's go with that. Save. So we have a class that doesn't inherit from anything, so it inherits from object. What does it say? Not found in base class, so we can't go with protected. So we go with public. Okay. No override. Okay. It's a function, not a procedure. It lists root directory. Okay, no parameters. List root directory. What does it say? Control dot. No. Don't I have a fix for this? Okay. So we copy this thing. in here, then we copy the prefix, Control V dot. We delete this thing, we delete this thing, we don't need this help. No private declarations, Control S. And it complains that it doesn't have a return value. So the return value is a list of string. List of string. Control dot. Undeclared identifier. Control V, Control S, F7. Terminate. Close. Okay. So I was inside of the debugger, that's why I didn't suggest anything. Does it have any suggestions for my problem? Control dot, control space, control something. No. I need to be on my own. So let's go with Delphi generics. Review of generics, declaring generics. Yeah, there's a T pair. Generics index. Overview. Okay. Code examples. No code examples for me. Delphi generic list. T-list. Okay, so it's the list of something, which is what I did. But I didn't include the using, which is this guy. System generics collection. How do I do that? System generics collections. So the list of uses is separated with comma and ends with semicolon. Control S. Okay. Now we need a lister. Delphi execute in CMD command line. Shell execute doesn't run command lines. System. Ah, good idea. So it redirects the output. So what we want to do is to run a CMD command line, which does dir backslash, and we capture the result. Bare format. This thing, and then we copy each line into a string that's inside a list. So we want to split this string by the new line separator into a list of strings. Okay, so how can we do that? Shall execute create process. Create process. Whoa. Windows read file. What is Windows? Wait for single object, close handle, std out, pipe read. Thread. Repeat until create buffer. Yeah, so I've done it like this before. So using the Win32 API create process and with the prefix cmd.exe/c and then the full command line, including redirects. But for our purposes, it would be just simpler to go with something that allows redirects. Everybody copy pasted this thing. Shell execute, and more shell execute. Okay, let's try the shell execute thing. Even though create process is the better solution. So what we wanted is similar to the C system function to run a full command line. Okay, so we need a class which runs a command line and captures std out. Add new other. Add new unit file, save as unit cmd exe run and get std out. Save. We need a class. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, std out as string, lowercase s or uppercase. Okay, so run starting with cmd get std out. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and the result is a string. Ctrl S, home. Okay. So it runs, what's shell execute? Windows. Okay, how do you complete the unit? System.windows. Dot. I know. Delphi shall execute. This guy. Okay, so what's the help for shell execute in Delphi? Windows API. Shell API. So WinAPI shell API. This capitalization, not any other capitalizations. Ctrl W doesn't work. Ctrl V. So when a unit is capitalized, the name of the unit is capitalized in some way, then I tend to keep that exact same capitalization, even if it's wrong. So it should be lowercase p and I. Middle click, clicking on the tab closes the tab, which is correct. Okay, so go shell execute 0, which is the HWND, so the handle of the parent window, nil, then file name cmd.exe correct, and then a ton of parameters including redirect. Okay, so we go in here, we need to pass the command line, const string and line. This is a big problem in Delphi compared to C# that you need to have the a method signature specified in two places in the interface section of the unit file. So this is a unit file. It starts with unit keyword, and it has two sections: the interface section and the implementation section. So the same definition of a method needs to exist both in the interface as part of the type definition and in implementation as part of the implementation of that method. Control S, what doesn't it like? F7. Identifier expected but string found. So you can't have const. I think I just saw a const string, but it was the second parameter. Oh, being C#. So const and then the type. And the identifier should be command line with Java casing. So in C, C++, Java, Delphi, the type comes before the identifier in declarations. In Delphi, it's identifier, colon, space, and then the type. Okay, Control S. So it's cmd.exe. This is on the environment variable path, so it's going to be found. Then we go cmd/c, and this will spawn a subprocess. cmd.exe is the command interpreter, the shell in the command line world of Windows and MS-DOS. No, just Windows. Okay, and NT style Windows is so Windows 2000, Windows XP and above. And then we put any command line that we want in here. So we go like this. How can we collapse these things? Let's make them smaller. Okay, so cmd.exe/c and then a subcommand. The subcommand comes from the command parameter. Command line parameter of this method is called command line. And then we go, let's give it a full path. Let's go with c:\temp/out.txt. And then there's a incompatible what? Nil, two nils. One nil. F7. Incompatible types pychar and string. So we need to convert the string to pychar because shell execute has pychar parameters. It says external shell32 is const, which has the value shell32.dll. So it's similar to, where you go? Go back. Where was the go back action? History back. Yeah. Okay. View history back. So this thing needs to be a py char, which is pointer to a white char buffer. So it's the first item, first white char in an array of white char. So in Windows there's char and white char. White char is a 2-byte and char is a 1-byte 8-bit. So char can be used to store one ASCII character. So this is the ASCII table, starting from decimal 0 to decimal 127, so just the first 7 bits in a byte. So these are valid 1-byte char in Delphi and in Windows. The higher bit in the byte, so the 8th bit in the byte, will create strange things. So we'll have different values if you go with ANSI, which is an extended one of the many ways to extend ASCII, or if you go with UTF-8. So just the first 7 bits in a byte are safe and have these values, ASCII. But then with 2 bytes you have a white char and this is a native Windows type, is wchart in C++, 16-bit 2 bytes, and is used for this special encoding invented by Windows, the native encoding used for strings in the Windows NT operating system, which is UCS-2. So UCS-2 is not UTF-16, but a ton of, for instance, Windows text editors will say UTF-16 instead of UCS-2. And when you go with UTF-16, you need to specify the order of bits, so it can be LE or BE, big endian or little endian. English characters, the characters of the English alphabet in UCS-2 little endian are stored like this. So it's A0, B0, C0. The second byte is always a 0. So that's the wchart type in Windows API C++. A double byte, and the type p white char in Delphi is a pointer to a buffer of white chars. We don't know the size, they are 0 terminated. So let's see if we can just force this Delphi native string to pychar. Like this. F7. Incompatible types pychar and string. Okay. How do we convert a string to pychar? We need a buffer. Let's have a local variable. Maybe this helps, of type string. So arg string type string is this thing. Ctrl X. Ctrl space to autocomplete. This is the assignment colon equals. No, like this. I put too many parameters inside of the pychar casting. Okay, so it's the first parameter is the handle of the window parent, the parent window. Then there's a nil, then there's the executable, then there's arguments to this executable. This is a Delphi string, but type, so it gets converted to pychar when calling shell execute. So it's an implicit cast. In here we have an explicit cast because we have a string concatenation. This is a string literal and this thing is not a string literal. Okay. And then nil, which means what? And then SW hide. So show CMD is an integer and dir directory. We don't need to tell it the current directory, working directory, because we specify full paths in here. Okay, how do I get the SW hide? So this thing shows CMD. Ctrl C TV Delphi. Why doesn't it go to the Delphi API documentation? Undeclared identifier SW normal. In the Windows unit. It's the system Windows. Now we write the short name of the unit, we compile, and then we navigate by control clicking the unit name, and we see the correct name is WinUp API.Windows. Control W does not work, middle click, and then paste on top of the short unit name, Control S. Okay. SW hide, and then we need to somehow read this thing out.txt. Delphi equivalent to read all text. Read all lines, this guy. API, a very important guy in the Delphi universe. Delphi about.com is a very important website. Most of the articles are written by Žarko Gajic for Delphi. And now maybe that thing migrated to thoughtcode.com or something. So it's Delphi about.com. Yeah, and it redirects to thoughtcode.com. So most, if not all, of the articles are written by Žarko Gajic. So it's kind of the w3schools.com website for Delphi. Really important. Evolution of Turbo Pascal to Delphi. Hello world. Properties, events, and Delphi. Writing code, code errors. A ton of useful articles about Delphi and written in a simple language, simple English. Okay, so what do we need now? We need to read. So with this thing, read all lines. This is similar to the C# syntax, so it's tfile.read all lines. Ctrl+C. Okay. What's the syntax? So read all lines. Control space. What's the auto completion? I don't know yet. Ctrl+C is the system IO utils, the unit. Let's navigate to that. So indeed it's system IO utils with this capitalization. Middle click. Okay. Read all lines. So it has a path and returns a t-string din array, whatever that thing is. So the name is ctemp out.txt const std out text path of type string equals this thing. Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. Yeah, now we really need a variable command line. Without cmd type string, because we want to list this thing. Okay, so assignment Control V, Control C. Let's see without PW white char cast if it works. And we need this thing. Control V, F7. So it doesn't compile because we really do need a cast. P white char. Okay. This thing should be in here. Okay. So before actually executing, we're going to log this thing. So we log it to the std out. So we go right line. Running command line with double quote plus cmd.exe and then space and then this thing, and then we close the double quote. Like this. Okay, F7. Let's put a breakpoint in here because it gets complicated. Okay. So we need a variable of this type. This guy is a unit. So this is one of the problems that Delphi has, because the type name, the unit name, and the local variable name usually should be the same, right? But you can't have all of these. So the unit name is either with an uppercase U as prefix, the class name is always with an uppercase T as prefix, and then the local variable can't really can be Java case and the unit name will be Pascal casing, because identifiers in Delphi are case insensitive. So cmd.exe with an uppercase C is the same thing as cmd.exe with a lowercase c. So local variables need to have different names from the unit, which is a problem. Okay, and we need to new this thing. Okay, dot create has no constructor parameters. Control space to autocomplete, run, and the command line is what we have put in cmd.exe, which is dir /p and backslash. Control V. And this thing returns, so we need to store the returned string. It returns a string. Okay. Std out as string of type string. Let's store this thing. Control V. And trailing semicolon Control S, and then is the command line application using this class. Not yet. Var. Okay. Control V, assignment dot create, no parameters, and then root lister temp dot list directory, no parameters, and then this thing returns an array of string, and then we files. And declare the identifier tlist. So that comes from here. It's system generics collections. Control V, Control S, F7. Okay, and we get the files from here, and then we list them somehow with a foreach. Delphi foreach. For file in files. And we need a local variable of type string. Okay. Var file name. We don't have paths, we have just relative names. Type string. And then we go with for each. Control V. Control C, Control V. In files, do we just write them? Okay. This should be it. F7, it builds. And F5 to start working inside of the debugger. Okay. So we have two classes, one that prepares the command line, which is dir space /b space \, and then returns the std out. And then we have another class which takes whatever command line and gets the standard output from that command line. Okay. Let's see what it says. Running command line cmd.exe/c dir/b / looks like a valid command line to me. Let's see if it really works. Paste and type c:\temp /o.txt. So it worked. Okay. So it does shell execute of the command line, and then sleep, and then read all lines. So this read all lines, we don't know what it does. It returns a string dynamic thing. which is what? I don't know how to convert this to string, or maybe I do. Let's see. Dot. Let's stop the debugger. Maybe that's a problem. So doesn't this have a converter to string? Result is a special local variable which has the value that's returned by a function. So functions have a return value and procedures don't have a return value, and the return value is identified either with result or with the full name of the method. So you can go run command line starting with cmd.exe_getDT out and assign it something, or you can go result and assign it something. The array of system string. Read all text. Okay, F7. F7. Okay. F5. I don't know why it messed the size of the window. F5. Okay. What's the result? So it's perflogs /r/n program files /r/n program files x86 /r/n temp, etc. So it's the correct value. And now it's just a string with many new lines in it. So we need to split this thing into a list of strings. I don't know how to do that, but I know how to search the internet. So F3 to stop. Shift F5. Shift F5 to stop the debugger. Okay. Control T Delphi split array. Okay, so it's called split. Split string. Okay, so this thing seems to be the way to do it. So let's do that. strutils. Let's have the first party uses at the start of the list of the uses list. So str navigate to it. It's system.strutils, middle click, paste, split string of std out as string. The delimiter is /r/n, which is these guys. We'll see in a minute. And then this thing, we need to split it. Let's see if we can do it straight in a for each. Okay. We need a local variable. Okay. Why is this indented? The begin and end. Control S. So we have one line and we need to put it inside of the result. So we go result. And then we need to create this local variable, this return value. Dot create. Okay, and then it's going to be returned automatically. And in here we go result dot we want to append, add, and one line, semicolon, Control S, F5, errors, internal error F7, F5. I compiled it once, it gave internal error, the Delphi compiler. I compiled it twice and everything was okay. Okay. So let's look at the result. It contains $D, which is hexadecimal uppercase D, which is 13, and $A, which is hexadecimal for the hexadecimal A, which is decimal 10, which is the same thing as hash 13 hash 10. Okay, so 1310. Okay, one line, what value it has, perf logs, correct. Empty lines, these are not okay in any way. Program files, we'll see when it exits the function if it contains strange things. It should split just by new lines, nothing else, and not have a trailing new line. So it put new lines, which is not okay. But this is how it is. So these new lines, I'm guessing the split went wrong. So instead of splitting by the entire string, backslash r backslash n, it's split just by backslash r, and then it took backslash n as a new string or something. Or it kept the new line terminator as part of the string, which is, I don't want that thing. So it should exclude the delimiter. So perflogs should not end with new line. Let me run it again to see. Shift F5, F5. Yes. Why don't you mess the size of the Delphi window? I don't need these breakpoints anymore. They work. Everything works correctly in here. So we have a command line that we compute inside of here. We prepend cmd.exe and space to it. That's a valid command line that can be run inside of cmd.exe. We write what command line are we running, and then we capture the std out because we redirect std out to a file, and then we read the text inside of that file. One line. Perflogs was the second line. This is the problem. So it splits in a way this thing doesn't work correctly. Splitting. So I don't want delimiters, I want one delimiter. So it uses delimiters as a list of possible delimiters, and that's not what I want. Split and then what? Oh, you can just give this list to a t-string list. Let's do that. Split string, so we need a t-string list. This prompts us to create a new class that just splits strings correctly. We can't have everywhere this ugly temporary variable. Dot create assignment, and then we set the value of the text to add this thing. And then hopefully foreach works inside of t-string list. F7. Okay, F5. F5. So one line perflogs. One line program files. Way better. Shift F11. Run until you return. Shift F11. F10. Okay, so no more empty new lines in here. Okie dokie. Okay, so this is it. We've created a medium size Delphi command line application, so not the simplest hello world, a bit more complicated. It has two classes, root lister and cmd exe run and get std out. It should have a third one, which is the string to the list of string class. Uses new syntax like foreach, this guy. Uses generics from system generics collections. It exercises Windows APIs, so it uses the shell execute, which is Win32 API. Sleep, which is Win32 API. The Win32 APIs require parameter of type pychar. So const wchar t pointer or all in Win32 API the type is what's it, LP shell execute goes to the Microsoft Windows API documentation, and the type is LPC_str for the A version, the ANSI version, the ASCII version, and then for the Unicode version, that's shell execute W, and that where are you? Shell execute A and shell execute W, this guy. So this uses LPCWstr. So this is a const pointer to a wchrt. So UCS2 ANSI the so-called UTF-16 little endian in Windows. And shell execute A receives a const pointer char, so pointer to a 1 byte char type. Okay, so we needed to convert to cast the Delphi native string type to Windows API's char, a white char. So the LPCWstr type, all uppercase. Then we use other consts which are part of the Windows API. We have navigated to symbols by control clicking on symbol, It takes us to the correct source code of the unit. In this case, win-api.windows.pass. We can navigate units by control clicking on them. Unit files have pass extension. The syntax starts with unit. In the middle, it has implementation and ends with a dot. Methods are the bodies of methods are implemented in the section implementation, so in between implementation and end with a dot. And the signature of methods is defined as part of the type signature, which is defined inside of a type section, which is inside of an interface section of a unit. Okay, so the console app is the main entry point. First console app, it just uses the root lister class that returns a list of string with the names of all of the files and directories in c:\/ drive in the top level, so not recursive. And for that, it uses root lister uses this command line dir /b /\, and we have another class which takes whatever command line and returns its std out as a string in here and in here. So it receives a const command line string and it returns a string which contains the standard output of that command. Okay, so that is it. Thank you.